I don't believe we're born to compete with anyone else. I believe we're here to compete with what we know we're capable of becoming. And I struggle every day feeling like I'm nowhere close to becoming the potential God gave me. And so to this day, I have to challenge myself to work less, to stop thinking about how I'm going to serve and impact obsessively and actually enjoy my daughter singing to the Elmo song. I need to intentionally be present with my husband at dinner when I am tempted to daydream about creating, building, serving, and impacting. Because a lot of people, we talk about dreaming big today, and I feel like a lot of people have these reasons they think they're not quite ready to dream big yet. And maybe they think they don't have the right support around them, or they don't have the right setup on their computer, or they don't have the right team they've hired, or they don't, all these things. And I think part of you showing and me showing, hopefully both of us, all the real stuff, it's like, oh, you don't always need to have all that stuff together to start or to dream big and to start having that vision. That's a big vision for where you're going while enjoying the moment.
People, I love that. Big vision for where you're going while enjoying the moment, and knowing that 100% of success stories you have ever heard, that success story began with somebody going 90 miles an hour and putting the wheels on as they were going and building the thing. They endured years of mess and disorganization and trying to figure out and doubt and risk of failure on the precipice daily. And you don't get that easy path when you want to do great things. Yeah. It's difficult. Les Brown always said, I love Les Brown. Les has been on our stages. Les is a personal development legend. I hope you know who he is. Les Brown always said, he's like, if you want your life to be easy, do hard things. If you want your life to be hard, do easy things. And it just says, it's like, oh, you have to push. You have to struggle. Here's what I want everyone to know. Thinking big today. This is my message to you. And thinking big. You are clueless to the depths of your capabilities. You have no idea what you are capable of. You have no idea what your full potential is. And I'm not judgment. I don't know either. Like, there's one guy up there. For me, I'm a spiritual person, so God's got me. God knows the immensity of the soul he put into this body, and no one else does, including me. I have no idea the immensity of the challenges God's got lined up for me 5 years from now, or 10 or 3 or 4 minutes. Like, you don't know. But what you do know is you're going to arrive and you will be summoned to call your best forth to serve one day. You will be summoned to rise above your own little insecurities and comforts and joys and ask, wow, how can I get more out of myself to be of service in this moment? Whether that is your first 2 years with a new baby, and you're like, my eyes, I haven't slept, you know? Or it's that first 4 years of your startup. It's going to demand so much of you, but you will rise to it. You will be capable. You will learn as you go. So stop all the waiting, get in the game, put the wheels on as you're going, move towards that dream with more rapidness, because you'll figure it out as you go. It won't be perfect. Jamie said, you're so vulnerable. Yet the other day you said to me, I feel like never in my life, Brendan, have I dropped more balls, I think you were saying.
And right now.
Yeah, tell them about that, because you're thinking big, but she's built $1 billion business. And right now, even after having that experience, she feels like this is life, y'all. Anyway, tell them about that.
I think, you know, when I think back to the early days of building at Cosmetics, there were years of I didn't know what I didn't know, right? And I was trying to do every job in my living room because I couldn't afford to hire anybody. And I think anytime we're also doing something new or dreaming big and trying to go to new levels, just the newness of all of it is overwhelming, right? Because we don't know what we don't know. And so, you know, at the end of a 10-year journey with that, building over 1,000 employees and $1 billion company and all that, I knew a lot about the beauty industry and about manufacturing and legal and acquisitions and building a team and leadership and all those things, right? And now, as a first-time author, I
A whole
actually
new game.
feel a whole new game. I feel like literally I'm back in my living room, not knowing what I don't know, right? And it's a growth, a major season of growth for me. And you and I, Brendan, talk a lot about just the idea of being a lifelong student. And I'm proud to be a lifetime student. And I'm honored to learn from everyone in our community right now who's posting in the comments and posting in Facebook and posting in Instagram. I'm part of the Growth Day Morning Show. We learn from each other. I learn from all the other Growth Day coaches. And I'm in a season right now of going, okay, because for the last 5 years, I've been offered book deals because of my story, but I didn't want to have a ghostwriter do it. So I said no for 5 years. I wanted, because I have learned in my life, like, you cannot fake authenticity. And, one of the things I talk about in the book a lot actually is how, authenticity alone doesn't guarantee success, but inauthenticity guarantees failure. And that's in everything, right? And I talk about all the lessons I've learned around that in the book. But then for me to have that book actually truly serve at the highest possible level, I wanted to write every word myself. I knew it had to be authentic. So this has been 2 years, actually, a year and a half, little over a year and a half of growth and of dropping so many balls and
learning new things, messing it up, trying to get into it.
Yeah, like you saw me when I got the first cover in. I was cutting it out and taping it to Jay Shetty's book because it was the right size. Every little thing I'm like trying to figure it out, and because I want it to be authentic and I want it to be right and I want to have no regrets. But yeah, I am dropping balls everywhere in terms of, last night I was up all night writing web copy, writing because I want it to be authentic to like the heart and soul of how I want to serve. And I'm doing a big launch event, which we'll talk about later. Because it's still top secret, but we're going to tell everyone on Growth Day first. But
she's doing it big. She's going for it. Listen, she decided to write a book. And I want everyone, I know some of you are thinking about writing a book or launching something new. When she said, I'm going to write a book, she said, I want it to be a bestseller. I want it to really impact millions of people. I want it to be a New York Times bestseller. I want to really get it out there. Even though, please listen, she'd never written a book, had no idea how to write a book, and had zero idea how to promote something.
Yeah.
Her confidence in thinking big came from her belief in her ability to figure things out. She's like, I'll figure it out. So your big vision should not be limited by today's skill set or today's competency. Your big vision should be based on your service you want to give, your dream you want to live with your family. And you will develop the skills along the way as you get in motion towards the thing. You don't start the journey perfect. The definition of perfection is to perfect. To perfect requires that you start. You start something, release something, launch something, and you perfect as you go. Perfect is a verb. It is done to something that is out there, that is released, that is built to perfect. And so you don't start perfect, you perfect. And then as soon as you go, oh, okay, we're going to start this Growth Day morning show. We don't know how to plug it into Instagram or Facebook. We don't know how to use an outward mic, these mics. We don't know what the heck we're doing. Our first 4 days, we were just perfecting how to do that little piece. We still are. I think that's so important. And Jamie, I want to give you credit because sometimes you feel like you're dropping so many balls because you're so good at what you're doing in every other area, but you're also doing awesome and you're getting great momentum, and I'm proud of you.
Thank you. Yeah. And I'm just trying to be brave, and I'm trying to, and this, this is something that I think is huge too, is we often talk about when, I have a whole journey of hearing no for years, right? Experts telling me my vision wasn't going to work for cosmetics and all those kind of things. But I still believe that it's our own self-doubt that kills more dreams than almost anything else. It's our own kind of limitations that we put on ourselves, or our own reasons we give ourselves why we need to still wait to do something, or we're not quite ready to write the book, or any of those things, right? And I get why, because doing it all and putting ourselves out there is scary. And sometimes it's easier to not dream big, because then we don't have to be afraid of not hitting that mark, or we stay in our comfort zone, right? But I think that to recap what you said in the start of this, which is so good, it's so good, is until we like take those chains off we put on ourselves, we don't know how much we're capable of. We don't know the level we're capable of dreaming and serving and giving and creating and ideating and inspiring, right? And leading and all of those things. And I think that, you know,
and the level of discipline you're all capable of, the level of, so Jamie is in what we call a launch window. So for those who are new, Jamie is launching a book called Believe It, and it comes out next month. I hope that you will pre-order on Amazon. It's called Believe It by Jamie Kern Lima. It comes out next month. She's in this time we call a launch window. A launch window is when your life becomes very like deep work, essentialism, high performance habits. You are doing this thing. A lot of balls are following all over there because you have this limited amount of time to launch this thing. And until you've been through that several times, you don't know how much you can get done. I'll give you an example of thinking big. This month, if you told me, okay, Brendan, in 1 month, listen to y'all, in 1 month, rebranded the company, onboarded 20 plus people and teams from outsourcing and internal all around, launched a new offering, brought in all our new growth coaches, in other words, found like 8 other new promotional partners and friends to serve, built a new software team, building the software, serving all of our customers without missing too many beats, launching a new community platform, launching this show, and somehow enjoying the month. If you told Brendan, 19-year-old Brendan, that was, he'd be like, I don't know how to hire. I don't know what a brand is. I don't know what a company is. What is it? Like, if you told your former self that, or your future self, I should say, you don't know what you're capable of. And I'm not saying that to be like, oh, look at me, because I've been feel like I'm putting the wheels on as I'm going. But I said, okay, let's just get in motion. We're going to figure it out. We're going to go. It's crunch time. Let's go. Let's move things forward. Move things forward. Move things forward. You will perfect as you go. But no way could I imagine that we could do all of this in a single month until you go for it, guys. You got to go for your dreams. Thinking big means moving big, taking big action, taking daily, you might call it small actions, but those daily small actions compound. You got to get in the game. Some of you, it's so easy to sit it out and you're still waiting for someone's approval or someone's understanding. It's like, if you feel like no one understands you, you have no one to blame but you. We have to learn. And I don't say that judgmentally, I had to learn to communicate. I sucked at communicating. I felt like I didn't have connection with people because I didn't know how to communicate. Be vulnerable, share emotions, like create human, like good friendships. I didn't know how to do that. So I did like a lot of you personal growth lovers who read How to Win Friends and Influence People from Dale Carnegie. Anyone read that? Oh my God, changed my life.
Yeah, I need to reread it. I read it like 20 years ago.
So good.
Yeah.
Such a classic.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
so
I did that because I was terrible with people. And so now I communicate to millions of people daily. So if you told that really awkward dude, oh, you're going to talk to millions of people, you didn't believe it. But as you jump into the dream and you get momentum, you start to believe it more. You get more skills, more capabilities. Those capabilities lead to competency. That competency leads to confidence, and you're moving. I don't know.
Yeah. And not only do you talk to millions of people, you train other incredible teams. I know I always bring up Oprah's team on the show, who I know you've trained, but you train so many people how to do it also. So it's like, not only do you do it now, you also are like one of the top people in the world at helping some of the top people in the world do it themselves. So it's pretty remarkable. And, one thing I want to share, because I'm reading the comments, a lot of people saying, oh, it's hard to unchain ourselves. It's hard to start. It's hard to start when we don't know if our idea is good enough, or we don't know if our dream is right, and all that kind of thing. And one thing you just said that I just want to call out, because I think it's really important, is that sometimes people do cheer for you after you've made it. And I want to call this out, okay?
Yes,
because
so true.
I've lived through this. I have lived through this, okay? I have so many stories. And that's why everyone writing a book, it's like, it is the greatest joy to go, oh my gosh, if people knew I went through all this, they would feel less alone. They would feel like they can get through it too, because this is the real stuff that happens. But there were so many people that did not cheer for me until after my company was a success, or after we were splashed in all the magazines, or after. And often when they start cheering for you, then it's in the form of, I always knew that you'd make it, or I'm so proud of you. I've been rooting for you from the beginning. You're like, no, you were, but it's okay. Right? I think it's right. Or they're like, they're telling people how they know you, and it's wild to watch this. And it's not that they mean harm. Here's what when I've peeled back the layers on this, there's a couple lessons here I want to share with anyone, especially if they're scared to start, if they're scared to take that jump, if they're scared to dream big and call their shot and go for it and all of that. Because what we start to do, I think, as humans, is we share our dreams or our ideas with the people around us. Sometimes we share them in groups. And then sometimes we share them with experts, or with, people in our industry that have had a lot of success or whatever. And then when we don't get the kind of response we're hoping for, right? Then we start to doubt ourselves, and we start to think we're not ready, or we think, oh, you know what? A million other people have done this idea. Like, maybe I shouldn't do it. It's already been done so many other times. So here's the big thing I've learned, okay, is, first of all, as we know, the only way to ever have a human connection is to show up authentically, right? And that can be with your partner, with a friend, with your customers online, with what you're doing, right? With how you're launching your dream. So just to take a step back, if you are doing something authentically, right, your dream. So in my case, there's a million beauty companies out there, and I launched a beauty company. Well, there's millions of them. Someone had already done it. Millions of people had already done it, right? But when you do something authentically, no one can do it the way you're doing it, right? So by definition, what you're doing is novel. By definition, it's never been done before. And here's what I've learned. Other people, typically, even experts, even visionaries, they typically can't imagine something being successful unless subconsciously they've already seen proof that it's already been done and it's already been successful.
Yes.
But because you're doing it authentically to you, it's never been done before. So don't be surprised when the people around you who love you, or the experts you have so much respect for, don't initially give you the reaction to your big dream or your big idea. It's because no one's done it the way you're going to do it. So it's never been done before. It's novel, it's new, right? And most people would never admit this, but unless subconsciously they've seen it that way and they've seen it succeed, they're not going to believe that it will. So,
except people who have done it themselves. Like you and I believe in people. We believe in you guys so much because when you meet people who came from nothing and they built it and they did it, they're the ones who usually are on board. Like, sounds like, go for it. Don't know if it's going to work, but cheer them on, encourage it. Like, people who've actually done it are the most encouraging. Yes.
Yeah. And we've gone through the journey of hearing thousands of people not believe in us. And then when you come out of the other side of that, you're like, and you have a whole new perspective, right? But the truth is, I mean, in my own journey, for example, as it pertains to building the company, I also learned years later, the hard way, after crying myself to sleep a lot of nights, after hearing a lot of no's, I learned, oh, wait, most of the beauty retailers, they're amazing and they're great. And they all said no to me for years, but they've also never actually built anything themselves.
Yes.
Right. And it's like, oh, and to your point, that's why I'm so passionate about Growth Day and supporting it however I can, but also this morning show, right? Because it's like when you surround yourself with people that are in that space, that share these kind of stories, then you're like, oh, okay, I get it that like Aunt Margie said that she didn't think this was going to be a success, but that's okay. She loves me anyway, and she's never built something like this. So she's seeing it through the best lens she knows how. But I'm not going to let that penetrate me, or me calling my shot, me going for my dream, me dreaming big, right? So I want to share that too this morning. I talk about a lot and Believe It, actually, how I had to overcome some of the things. Like I remember when I was working as a Denny's waitress, right? And like to really adopt this mindset of where I come from does not determine where I'm going, or where I'm even at right now in this moment in time doesn't limit the ability to have like God-sized dreams and to have expansive vision. And one of my closest friends who's speaking live at the event on Monday, Leah Key, always says, she grew up in a homeless shelter, and she saw people all around her that did not dream, that let fear rule their life. And I'm talking about her immediate family. And, her mother said something to her as a little girl that stuck with her. She said, your predicament doesn't determine your destiny. And she'd always say to Leah, you have a light inside of you, right? And Leah held on to that, even during all the years growing up in the projects in Philadelphia when she was able to get out of a homeless shelter. And, she was like, where I come from doesn't determine where I'm going. And slowly over the years, she started making friends that had, expansive vision like she does. And, you fast forward now, and she's created her own company, launched it on QVC. So she went from homeless to 100 million homes with her jewelry line. And, it's all about mindset, right? For her, it wasn't, oh, do you come from the right family? Do you have any connections? Do you have any money? No, it was for her. It was what made all the difference was adopting this mindset of believing in the possibility of her own dreams and her own self, even if she couldn't figure out how it was going to happen or how to get there one day. And I love that we're focusing on mindset this week on Growth Day Morning Show, because I think that it's like the thing. It's like the most important thing, more important than where you're at right now. Where's the traction happening or not happening in your business right now? What's going on with all the setbacks and the hard times and this hard season we've come out of? The mindset, getting that right, life-changing. That's
truth. That's truth. I think that is just a huge miss for most people, is that simple. What's true is, what I love about this Growth Day community is all of you, when I say mindset, you automatically know the insane value of that. Like people who love personal development know, like, oh, that's foundational. But when most people come into personal growth, they've had years of bad mindset. They've had years of a bad attitude, or they've suffered, doubt, depression, discouragement for so long that it's like, oh, wow, this is the right mindset, and the ability to generate that right mindset on a consistent basis is a revolution for your life. It's not like an incremental change. It's like it's night and day. It's light and dark. It's joy or suffering. It is such a huge topic that I just believe most people, take advantage of or take for granted. But I know that our Growth Day community knows that. So if you would, in the comments down below, would you guys share with us, what is one of your favorite mindsets? Since we're Mindset Week, that's our theme for the week. What's a mindset that you think people should have? Maybe that's just a thought that you think they should have, or an attitude you think they should have, or just a way of thinking that, like a pattern that you think would be beneficial to them. I'm seeing optimism. I'm seeing gratitude. I'm seeing focus. I'm seeing joy. I'm seeing a lot of mindset for positivity, for growth. That's great. I like that one. I think it's really good. Thank you for sharing that, guys. I think that's key.
And also one thing I want to share, just that's coming to mind right now. Yeah, with the topic of mindset, Brendan, is something that you brought up earlier, right? Which is this idea, and I love these words. Like I write all about this and Believe It. I talk about how this big realization I came through, that we're not here on this earth to compete with anyone else, right? We're just here to compete with who we know we're born capable of. And I want to share a real life story that happened to me recently in real time, actually. And I found it fascinating, right, as it pertains to mindset, because I think so many people are tuning in. They're part of our morning show right now. And maybe it's good to just do a self-check on are you comparing yourself to anyone else? And are you thinking someone else is your competition and getting distracted by it versus thinking, oh, I'm on my own journey. Who am I capable of becoming? And what if you actually just celebrate that other person's achievements? And here's a quick story that just happened to me that I was kind of like, because when it comes to women in particular, this is super antiquated way of thinking, but there's still amongst a lot of women this idea of like, oh, because they're so used to just seeing one woman at the table in a boardroom or what, and so there's a kind of a limited way of thinking that we're overcoming, that if another woman wins, it means it takes away from your chances of winning, right? And there's just this competitiveness that just isn't true, right? It's just not true. And Abby Wambach says, her victory is your victory. And it's so true. I want to share something that just happened that might it shocked me. So let me just share it, Kay, because I think everyone out there right now, it might help inspire you with your own mindset. But, I have some of the most inspiring people on the day speaking live, right? Including Brendan Burchard speaking live.
What?
Yeah, Brendan Burchard speaking live. And it's a whole day on building confidence. So I asked Mel Robbins to speak live, and she said yes. And I'm so excited about it. And I got some feedback, right? And I just want to share this. I got some feedback from someone saying, so Mel Robbins is the most sought after female speaker in the world right now. You know that, right? I'm like, yeah, I know that, of course. And they're like, that, like, this is your event. So are you sure you want her? Like, she might overshadow.
Oh, no joke. Really?
Yeah. Are you sure? Lame. But this is huge. This is what I want to share. Like, I'm so excited about this because I'm like, oh wow, it's seeing this play out before my eyes. Like, are you sure? Like, it's your big event, Jamie, on the whole day. You have Brendan Burchard and Tony Robbins, all these people speaking live for free. Like, Mel Robbins is the most sought after female speaker in the world. Are you sure you want her on your stage? And I'm like, wow. I'm like, okay, first of all, here's how I feel authentically through and through every ounce of my being. If another woman is at the top of her game, my job, what brings me the most joy is saying, how can I lift her up higher? How can I invite her to my stage where maybe, over 100,000 people are going to see her for the first time? Like, how can I celebrate the #1 female speaker in the world, Mel Robbins, and raise her higher? Like, that's where I get my joy, number one. Number two, all these people that are going to share, and what a blessing they're going to share their time with us on the day and show up, right? And it's free, by the way. It's a free event at becomingunstoppable.com. But when you show up for this event, my job is to serve. Like, my job is to go, how can everyone is going to spend their precious time with me on this day. I want them to get the most out of it. What a blessing to them to hear Mel Robbins speak live on the day. Like, you usually have to pay so much money to go to a keynote speech and fly somewhere to hear her speak. Same with you, Brendan. So I'm like thinking, wow, this antiquated mindset of people thinking that someone else is a threat to our own, like our own success. It's so antiquated and it's so not true. And in my own journey of building It Cosmetics from this tiny company to now it's the largest luxury makeup company in the US now, which is wild, right? It passed all the department store brands. I used to save my dentist.
I remember you texting us when that happened. It was like
crazy,
woo!
Right?
Yeah.
But like, if I on that journey of building this huge company had like got distracted thinking these other brands were my competition, I would never have been able to build something different or special. I would have limited myself to thinking, oh, this is my competition. It's like, oh, no. Our potential is our competition. The potential we have inside of us is our only competition.
It's seeing that people still think that way. And soon as you go from, because that's just a limited pie idea, that's just if they get it, I can't. It's a zero-sum thinking, which is the worst mindset ever. Yeah. And most people go, no, but competition is really good. It's like, no, competition is really great in sports, right? Where there is a zero-sum. One team wins, the other. But even the greatest sports people of time have realized how bringing that into other parts of their life can be extraordinarily dangerous. I work with Olympians who talk about that all the time. It's like the competition on the field is really important. Off the field can ruin your life. But in business, you're really not competing with anybody but yourself. You think you are competing with other people, No, you're trying to do what you do uniquely and distinctly at the highest level of excellence. Yes, you need to know what other people are doing. Like, what is the quote unquote competition? Like, what do other people in your space do? I never even think about anyone in my space as competition. I go, oh, what are other people in my space doing? Can I learn from that to make my work better? Can I, like, that learning mindset I would share out of everything anyone could learn here. Adopting the learning mindset is the primary move to changing your life. The second one, I would say, the primary mindset, which you have, and we're kind of a theme of what we're talking about right now. The second primary mindset I think everyone should adopt is the role model mindset. I speak about this all the time. Stepping into that space of your life where you say, oh, you know what? I'm going to live with such an integrity, consistency, discipline, care for others that they see me as an example. And I'm setting a standard or an example for my kids. I'm setting an example or standard for my team. I'm setting an example or standard for the school, for this community, for this team, for this organization. Like, that mindset that people are paying attention to your energy and your behavior makes you a better person. It's when we are in our own world that we become so narcissistic that we can't even recognize our effect on others, that the poison within grows. But when we recognize social animals, right? We're social animals. So when we recognize our impact with other people and we want to lift them by being a role model, suddenly it demands a better set of behaviors from us.
I love that. I feel like comparison is poison within, like exactly what you just said. It's such a distraction. Also, I want to say one thing about role model mindset too, because you talk about it so much. And I want to make one clarification, actually ask you one clarification. I think there'll be a lot of people out there who will think like, oh, I'm too flawed to be a role model. I'm too this, I've made too many past mistakes. Right? Like, I just want to say, I don't think you have to be perfect to be a role model, have a role model mindset. I don't think you don't have to like not make mistakes every day or not have misjudgments or miscalculations, or it's not that. Everyone, no matter how many mistakes you've made, how many misjudgments, how imperfect, how all those things, can still adopt a role model mindset. Can you make that clarification too? Because I think a lot of people instinctively feel like, oh, I'm not qualified to have a role model mindset. But I think
the good news is you're the only person qualifying yourself. So the good news is you're the only person qualifying yourself.
And isn't that true on almost everything?
Yes, you're the only person qualifying yourself. That's the ultimate mindset of something in personal development, which began in personal development, which is called self-reliance. Which is called the idea of taking personal responsibility or personal accountability for who you are and how you show up and what you're about. And so I think fundamentally, we have to realize all of our great role models, like the big names or the big books or the big leaders in the past, they became a role model precisely because we saw their struggle and they still showed up with intention and good behavior.
Yes.
So the struggle was not removed. The mess was not removed. The vulnerability was not removed. It was because of their success, and their striving was built upon a foundation of disadvantage or difficulty that we go, that's why that person's a role model, because they still show up. So if you've been hurt or you're not perfect, the fact that you still show up with good intentions and good behaviors for others and yourself, that makes you a role model. Not because you have a million. Look, there's a ton of people on Instagram. They have millions of fans for showing their butt every day. Okay, following and popularity.
No judgment. Keep going.
No, but it's just listen. Popularity does not equal role model.
Right.
Money does not equal role model. Right. Your fancy car or your jet does not equal. What equals a role model is you keep showing up even when it's hard, and you have good intentions and behaviors for others. Yeah, that happens on the daily. You start going, you know what, that person, I've literally, and I've highlighted these folks on my shows and things in the past, like I have janitors in my life and mechanics in my life and people who are like literally living in poverty in my life who were role models to me. Yeah. And even when I was in poverty in my life, seeing that from there were people in my community who didn't have anything, who were still the people you turned to because you knew they've also struggled, but you also knew they cared. I think that's the magic.
what would you say is the most important the most important trait would be for success?
I think,
besides believing in yourself, because
yeah,
I think we've spoken about that so much.
Yeah. I think I can give you three things, but
Give me three.
I really think that, and it's not just believing in yourself, making the decision to believe success is possible for you. I think that so many of us just think we're not qualified. Or we don't have what it takes, or we don't come from the right family, or we don't come from the right background, or we don't have the right education, or we don't have the right experience, all those things. And I think we talk ourselves out of it. And I think making that decision to believe it's possible is huge, like huge. Some of the things that just come also top of mind is, I talked a little bit earlier about when I was building at cosmetics and how it wasn't just about finding a product that worked, I think that so many people can be great at setting goals, and so many people have done enough reading or listened to enough podcasts where they understand the concept of like identifying your why behind what you're doing, right? Which is like your mission for doing it.
Mm-hmm.
The biggest mistake I think a lot of people make though around this, and it's why they give up or they stop their health journey, or they, whatever it is, quit the business or never start it. I think that a lot of people identify a why that they think is the right one, and it sounds really good. And if you share it with someone else, it sounds really good. Like maybe it's like, oh, I'm doing this because I want to buy a house, or I'm doing this because I want to pay for my kids' college one day, and those are great whys, right? Like they sound so great. They make so much sense, but often they're not deep enough and they're not meaningful enough to make sure you don't quit when times are tough. And of all the things, I did so many things wrong. One of the things I did right was like you have a why, but you have to peel back the layers and go really, really deep, right? So I shared, like, for me, like wanting to shift culture and beauty and help end that process of every little girl about to start doubting themselves, every grown woman who still does, and shift culture on that. That was really deep for me because my whole life I'd felt that not enoughness every time I'd see those beauty images. That was way more deep for me, that mission to do that for other people, than it was to go, oh, I want to buy a house, or, oh, I want to create a great product, or whatever it is. And I think a lot of people, they've got to go deeper. Like I think they start, whatever it is, and they have a great why, but like they've got to put, I recommend, because a lot of people don't do this, is putting in that work of going deeper and deeper and deeper.
So what the purpose, the real true purpose is, versus just like a surface level.
Yeah. And some people think they know it. Like maybe it's like, oh, I want to, I want to pay for my kids' school. But if that's all it is right there, for some people, that's not enough. And an example, I'm making this up, but if someone says, oh, you know what? I want to peel back the layers deeper. Maybe the real why there isn't to pay for my kids' college. Maybe the why is to break a multi-generational cycle of complacency or poverty or whatever in your family. And
right, that's a big why.
Yeah. And that could be the same person, right? But they thought their why was to pay for college. And it's easy to then go, oh, you know what I'm saying? But when it's that deep.
But a lot of times people don't even know that why yet. Exactly. They have to go down the path first, a little bit further, to really kind of unravel what was pushing them. Like a lot of times, like what for me anyway, and I know it's a lot of people I know, you go down a path for one reason and your reasons change as you kind of go through it, right?
Yes.
And you morph and grow, and then you really find the real why.
Yeah.
But,
and I think
right?
Totally. And I think that's true. I think when you get to a spot though, where you're like, I just want to quit. And if your gut is telling you to keep doing it, that's when I think it's the time where you also have to then go deeper and be like, I want to quit, but my gut's telling me not to, but like, why is it I want to give up? And then just like, in those moments, figure out what is that deep, deep, deep why that fuels you.
Right. I agree. And you always knew, well, you had two things going for you. I think the first thing is, we didn't even touch upon this at the beginning of the podcast, but you created your cosmetic company because you had a need for it. You had rosacea that you couldn't find any product to actually help you. So you were kind of filling an ailment that you actually had.
Right.
And a lot of times I feel like when people do that, when they're feeling, when they themselves are needing of something, and then the best products usually bloom from that.
Right.
And having the why. Did you have that why at a young, because reading your book, you had a work ethic. I know you were like, in your yearbook, you said you were like the queen of procrastination, or you were like dubbed that.
Yeah.
But over time, your work ethic became extremely clear, like what a strong work ethic you had. Do you feel like that was a huge part of why you're successful as well? Is because that like 100-hour weeks and kind of grinding like you did, like you just weren't going to take no for an answer, no matter what.
I think not taking rejection personally was huge, which I can share about in a minute. I don't think someone needs to work 100-hour weeks to succeed. I don't think they need to work a third of the amount of hours I worked to have the kind of success I did. I think when I look back, it's one of the things I actually wish I did differently. With the number of hours I worked. Yeah. Because I don't, I pray every day. It hasn't taken a toll on my health and all those things I don't know. But what I realize is that, when after 3 years of solid no's, not paying myself, when we finally, many years after that, started actually, things were doing really well and our accounts were thriving and we were getting into all these stores, I couldn't process at the time, or maybe a better word is I didn't know how to believe at the time that the success was real. And I worried at every single second it could all come crashing down. And it's another form of imposter syndrome, right?
Where I was going to say.
Yeah. And so I drove myself so hard because I thought, oh my gosh, like I need to strike while the iron's hot, like all of that. Right. And it never let up. And it was a decade before I realized, I actually didn't yet believe I was worthy of this success. So I couldn't believe that it was happening. And it wasn't until I learned to believe it was real, to believe like it's possible for me, it is happening, I have earned it, all those things, that I was able to better prioritize stuff, that I was able to make bigger decisions. Like, we tried to have a baby. I tried to get pregnant for 10 years and, had miscarriages and so many things. And when we finally welcomed our daughter, she's 2.5 years old now, Wonder, into the world, I was raised with parents that worked so hard all the time and they were often not around. And I just made this decision like, oh, wow, I'm repeating that cycle and I'm not going to do that for my daughter, and it's going to be okay. And my success is going to continue. And it was really just making those big, shifts around that I was better able to do it. But I don't think anyone needs to ever work 100-hour weeks. I did it from a place of I couldn't believe this success was happening. And I was just driving it so hard because I had a fear it could all come crashing down. And, when I was a waitress at Denny's, I could have never imagined at the time, I always knew like I was supposed to serve in a bigger way and impact and things like that. But I could have never imagined I would have 1,000 employees and, sell my company for over $1 billion cash. Like those kind of things I couldn't imagine. And when they happen to us, it's how we react to it. It's a whole other thing. Right. And so that's why I did that part. So
I like that you say that. I think that's really true and real because the imbalance, right? When you work that much, you're giving the amount of stress, like you were saying, you were trying to have a baby and like you were so overworked, your body was like shutting down probably in some way, or because of your hormones, or probably your cortisol levels, you know, I mean, so unhealthy. And yet it was, I think a lot of people can relate to what you're saying. It's that most people do that because they don't feel like it's real. Like that imposter syndrome is such a real thing. And that's what motivates people to do that. Right.
And I think like, you know, I think that not feeling qualified, not like, you know, all of those things. Right. And I think it's so important we're talking about it too, because I think a lot of people who feel imposter syndrome, you know, which is like, oh, I'm not qualified to be doing what I'm doing, or I don't deserve to have clients trust me, or I don't, you know, all the things we think, right? Depending on our own life situation. But like, I feel like it's human, and I feel like it's important to talk about it too, because a lot of people feel it and they think they're alone in it. You know what I mean? And it's like, no,
absolutely,
we all go through it. And for me, you know, I started assembling like a toolkit of things that I would go to, like imaginary toolkit, like quotes, sayings, stories that I would go to when I start feeling that. And, you know, for me, and I think this is universal regardless of people's faith or whatever, but every time I'd start doubting myself or feeling like not qualified or any of those things to be doing what I was doing, yet I felt like it was my calling to be doing it, and my mission and my purpose. I felt like a calling, but so many times I would doubt I was qualified. And there's these famous words I would always go to that would help me. So I'm going to share them in case someone out there needs to hear this right now.
Go for it.
And the famous saying goes like this: God doesn't call the qualified; He qualifies the called. And I would read those words over and over. And to me, they mean, regardless of your faith, to me, they mean if you have this thing you can't shake in your gut, like you're supposed to start the group of moms that gets together and just shares the real stuff over wine, whatever it is, you feel this thing you're supposed to do, start the book, start all those things. Like, I believe it's start the business, leave the job you're in, all those things. I think that if you can't shake it, I think it's part of your purpose. I think it's part of your calling. And to me, if something's part of your calling, then it's like, if God doesn't call it qualified, He qualifies the called. To me, that means you have everything you need inside of you already, right? To actually accomplish the calling you were born to walk into. And so when I do doubt myself, which I still do to this day, those are words that I always reference that help me. And so many other lessons I share in the book on things that help, and just, because I
love that quote though. It's beautiful. It's a really good one.
Yeah. Thanks.
Now I want to talk more about how I see intuition. Tell me if you think I go astray, if you have an insight maybe that I'm missing. This is what I've taken from your book. So obviously if I get something wrong, let me know. But so when you get to that moment in the book and you talk about hearing that devastating news, which for anybody would be ruthlessly difficult, for a woman, just multiply it by 100. So the fact that it, you know, maybe was a dazing blow, but you regain yourself and you get back in the game. And I start replaying your story from the beginning, things you'd already talked about in the book up until that moment. And I realize, okay, wait, she struggled with her weight in school. She was sneaking diet shakes and drinking them in the bathroom with other girls who were going through the same thing. And that was like the first ding. Okay, other girls that are going through the same thing. That's interesting. And, you know, really struggling with your weight and seeing how it affects other people, and, you know, wanting to find ways to connect with them and make them feel better. And you develop this ability almost to soothe other people even more effectively than you soothe yourself, which ding was another, okay, that's interesting to see sort of what you could give to somebody else. And what I want people to understand, what I'm building here, is the context. It is I talk about it in terms of context or frame of reference, but it's what people would refer to as their gut, the thing that sort of escapes logic, that's built on everything you've lived up to that point. And then there's one thing that when I read in your book, I legitimately was by myself and out loud, I was like, what? I had no idea that you found out in your late 20s, 27 if I'm not mistaken, that you're adopted, and that you become obsessed with who am I? And the notion of who I am has sort of fallen away into tatters. And I was like, oh my, the chill.
I wish you could see that on camera. I have the fucking chills thinking about how your story, all of those elements, because you had the ability to contextualize it, see it as intuition, God speaking to you, however you translate that, but that quest of identity, of realizing that what your mission is in It Comics was to help people love themselves as they were. And so it would be an affront to your very reason for existing to take that guy's advice. So it's like, if I'm a screenwriter leading up to that moment, for the character to be true to herself, of course she has to reject that advice, because the being in the bathroom and sharing those shakes and loving those women, those girls for who they were, and seeing something they couldn't see in themselves, and battling with your own weight, and then the adoption and having to refigure out who you are, all of a sudden you realize, identity is like extraordinarily important. And now the piece de resistance, you marry that with a real business education, not only of experience, but actually having gone to school and studied this stuff. And now it's like, okay, I've got pieces that I can explain, which, by the way, I'm literally just walking people through what's in the book, which is why this book is so powerful. Of when you understand that your life has been hard, I'm talking to everybody now. Your life has been hard. It's full of upsets and slights and abuses and dumb mistakes and embarrassments and all that. What your book and your ideas teach people is how to turn that into feeling that when you're still, you can interpret through a mission to make choices that are counterintuitive. Now, why is that important? Your life is an explanation of one very simple idea, which is, if you want to succeed big in business, you must bet against the consensus and be right. For you to have built something that you could exit for $1.2 billion, everyone had to be against you. Otherwise, they would already be doing it. It had to be the counterintuitive idea. And seeing the pieces like that led up to that moment is breathtaking in your ability to lay it out and like draw those pieces together. And so what I hope people don't lose, because here is, and we may see this differently, but when I am compelled by one simple fact. Right now, your zip code is the number one predictor of your future success. That is true because the context of your youth binds into your mind in a way that is ruthlessly difficult to recognize as a construct. You simply mistake it for truth. And so people get trapped in these very terrifying ways. So I think a lot about how do you get people to train their intuition so that really when they turn inward, because most people, I think they turn inward and they're still so broken, they think I'm not worthy. And so when this guy says, don't do this, they crumble because they haven't translated the hard experiences into a mission, which is what you did.
So from all measures, you're incredibly successful. But a lot of people don't succeed when they're successful. They fall apart, they burn out, it goes to their head. What advice do you have to people who are succeeding to stay successful at what matters most?
This is something that I continue to struggle with, to be totally honest. I think that as someone who's I've always felt like God has put a great calling in my life. And I don't believe we're born to compete with anyone else. I believe we're here to compete with what we know we're capable of becoming. And I struggle every day feeling like I'm nowhere close to becoming the potential God gave me. And so to this day, I have to challenge myself to work less, to stop thinking about how I'm going to serve and impact obsessively and actually enjoy my daughter singing to the Elmo song. I need to intentionally be present with my husband at dinner when I am tempted to daydream about creating, building, serving, and impacting. And it is a daily struggle for me. So, and maybe other people listening can relate to that as well. But it's something that I'm just being really intentional because I can look back and go, okay, I've achieved all of these incredible things that they only write about in movies. And yet the moments that fill my soul the most aren't usually those achievements, right? There are the times when, my daughter was born, or, I help, but they're also, let me say this, and maybe you have these moments too. Like just this morning when I get a letter from someone who says like, I read Believe It, or I, whatever. And I decided to trust myself and it worked, or things like that. Like those are the moments that fill my soul. So, I'm trying to be intentional about doing both, about being someone who I feel, is called to serve in a great way, but also trying to not look back at life and say, gosh, I forgot to enjoy it.
That's so good. And you use the word 3 or 4 times, the word intentional. I think anybody who's a high performer like you, and the vast majority of our community, they're visionaries. They're growing, they're stretching themselves. We don't want to be successful just in the business and not be successful at home. And it's what happens in the home. It's what happens in your heart. That's where the true lasting measure of success is. And so congratulations if you can do both. But if we're going to do one, we don't need to sell the business for $1.2 billion and lose everything else that matters even more. We want to really be intentional as you are. And it's hard. It takes work, because when you can do a lot, you tend to want to do a lot. But you don't want to do a lot of what doesn't matter as much as a lot of what does matter most. And I congratulate you and Paulo on being great at both, producing great value and staying centered, or working to stay centered at the things that matter most. The name of the book is Believe It, Get It, Believe It. It's incredible. Lightning round. Jamie, I'm going to ask you a bunch of quick questions just for fun. Don't think about it. Just tell me whatever comes to mind. What's your biggest leadership pet peeve? What drives you crazy?
Okay,
you're thinking too long. Be honest.
What drives me crazy?
Yes.
What drives me crazy?
Yes.
Incongruency.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah, incongruency. I think when you show up fully authentically is when you're your most powerful. I think your authenticity is your superpower. I think most leaders are scared to be authentic.
Before you speak at the Global Leadership Summit, or before you go on live with Tony Robbins or John Maxwell, or wherever you are, what do you say to yourself right before you give a talk?
God, use me. Love, use me.
Love it. What is a recent discipline or habit that you've added to your life that you're excited about?
4:30 a.m. wake ups. Getting time.
Let's go.
That still time in the morning. That still time is been healing and also just inspiring.
I wonder what percentage of the highest performers actually have a very early wake up time. I don't know what that is, but I'm guessing it's pretty high. That time in the morning is very important to me, and I think that's true for a lot of leaders. Is there a favorite book that you've read recently?
I'm reading The Way of Integrity right now with Martha Beck, which is really interesting. Also about congruency with your truth, which is really powerful. Love that one. I'm reading so many books. You know what happens when you write a book? Like Believe It came out. Now, all of a sudden, everyone wants me to read their books to get an endorsement. I'm like, there's so many books, but it's really fun. So actually, I should change my answer. Believe it. Believe it. How to go from underestimated to unstoppable.
It is. Well, I do want to congratulate you on the book hitting New York Times bestseller, and it's really fun to see that your influence is increasing every single day. I think your message is one that is so encouraging, and I just would say, as a student of leadership, thank you for every single sacrifice that you made, every rejection that you endured, every obstacle that you overcame, to give us a story that we can both applaud and just learn from, because it's thousands upon thousands of lessons. And the great thing is, when you were a waitress at Denny's or sacking groceries, that was preparation. When you were building your business, interestingly enough, that was preparation. When you sold it and became the first female CEO for L'Oreal, that was preparation for what you're doing today, which is an even bigger influence. And what you're doing today is preparing you for what you're going to do in the years to come. And so I just love being a fan, cheering you on, and congratulate you on a life that really is making a difference, Jamie.
Do you believe that optimism was an incredibly big factor and ingredient in your success?
I think optimism is great. I think, though, that knowing why we're doing what we're doing, listening to our gut and going after our calling, like literally living our calling, I think that's the victory.
Hold on though.
Yeah.
Here's an interesting question. Every human needs levels of affirmation along the way to sustain that. Right?
Yeah.
And so in the beginning where you're not seeing those results, for many, and you might have, I've always seen results pretty quickly in my good calls. So I always try to think about someone who's not seeing it. So because they don't have optimism, they have delusion, and they think they're going to be, Beyonce when they can't sing, right? Do you feel like believing in your calling gets affirmed along the way? What do you rely on in that beginning? Don't you think blind faith is actually completely grounded in optimism?
I mean, for me, my faith is a huge part of my life.
I'm going to take religion as faith out. I'm saying I'm just thinking about you, young you in this moment, and I'm really fascinated by it. I'm meant to do this because what you're talking about is what I love, which is the journey.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm trying to get into your. Go ahead, please.
Yeah. I was going to say, I don't think the victory is the outcome, right? I don't think the victory. Listen, I know how accomplished you are and everything. I know you're going to have the New York Jets one day. I know all that. But I don't think that's the victory. I think the victory is the journey of actually like stepping into all of who you are and not talking yourself out of your own truth. And what I mean by that is this journey that we're talking about, right? Of course, optimism, of course, resiliency to get back up every time you're knocked down, of course, all those things. But I think that so many people listening right now, if they don't ever learn to get still and hear their own truth and hear their own intuition, I think what's going to happen, and this is what happens to most people, is they end up staying in their comfort zone. They end up putting their own immediate failures on a pedestal or other people's opinions or self-doubt. They end up talking themselves out of their own truth. And then they end up never actually becoming the person they're born to be. So for me, I don't think like the fact that I was able to build $1 billion company is the victory. I think the moments of me knowing this is what I'm supposed to do and trusting it, even when it doesn't make sense. And I'll give you one example, okay, of this. So, and maybe this will make sense because optimism, of course, is important, and I know what you're saying. But I think the biggest thing is learning how to hear yourself and trust yourself. I really believe that. There was a moment.
How do you define that as a term? Because I view that as self-belief and confidence and optimism. I think that you're such a, very quickly I'm like, oh, this is my sister. Like literally within the first 3 seconds, I'm like, oh, I see. So I'm trying to do, and I apologize because I'm hoping a different voice might do this for the listener. I'm trying to figure out what words you use to quantify. I fully agree with you, everything you're saying. I'm wondering if you view optimism as, so I think optimism, similar to what we were talking about earlier, sometimes gets pegged as delusion.
Yeah.
And I've been thinking about, you see where I'm going? Because I could almost feel you doing that right now. And I'm like, I get you, sister. Because like this is why it's so great. Wordsmithing matters, right? Like, for example, hustle has gotten demonized as like burnout. So I no longer use it because I don't need it. You know what I'm going to call it? Work ethic. Call it what you want. Here's what I can tell you. For all the belief you had and all the love you had in doing what you were doing, I'm pretty confident based on your outcome that there was a lot of work ethic there. And so whatever you want to call it, and sometimes I just think about, I know the word hustle triggers people, so I use the word work ethic now because I don't want to ever not let anybody who cares to listen to me not realize that if you don't put in the work, it is impossible. Thoughts on that?
Yeah, I agree with that. And I just had a big aha moment that what you're saying is optimism. I 1,000,000,000% agree with. And I'm thinking of that right now as belief. Same thing. Yep. And now I'm right there with you. Like, here's the thing and then I want to share one quick story with you too, that hopefully someone listening right now maybe needs to hear. But I mean, when I look back, it's like when people are like, oh, how did you start with close to nothing and build $1 billion company? It's like, yeah, I got back up every time I got knocked down, and I followed my gut and I worked really, really hard. But I do think that one of the most important things I did was just like how to build $1 billion company from nothing. Like, I think one of the most important things is making that decision to believe that you can.
Yes.
And for me, that's optimism, exactly what you're saying. And I guess I call it belief. So yeah, 1,000,000% with that. And one more thing, just on maybe people listening to us right now that are like, oh, Gary, like Jamie, I trust my gut sometimes and it's wrong, or I tried it once and it didn't work, or I don't know how to hear my own intuition. I just want to say, I think that it is a muscle that we can all build. And I think people have to give themselves grace, right? It reminds me of like when you start to meditate, a lot of people try it and they can't do it. They're like, they go through their to-do list in their head the whole time they're trying to meditate, but you have to like give yourself grace and start. And what I would say, whether it's entrepreneurs or someone who's 14 years old and out there dating right now, I would say when you start to look back at your experiences and think about moments when you had a gut feeling and you didn't follow it. Like we've all dated like a sketchy guy or or had a, and like, you're like, his phone didn't really just like shut off for 3 days, or he didn't lose the phone. He went like, and then you kind of make that decision of like, okay.
Talk to me about, I mean, we are really vibing here. I actually want to talk to you offline because I just have had the thought. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I'm so excited.
Okay.
Insecurity.
Yeah.
Right? Because you're like, to me, like thinking to my friends that were girls that were dating guys that I knew what the guys were doing, which was they were preying on my friends' insecurities, and sometimes brilliant, beautiful girls. And I'm like, this fucking sucks.
Yeah.
This woman, you really triggered something in me. This woman, I'm thinking about 4 or 5 friends through the last 20 years. This woman is subjectively, and if we had 100 people ask, is 1,000,000 miles better than this man. This man has figured out the cheat code that if he makes her feel insecure, he has the leverage. Thoughts?
Yep. I think that happens every single day. And I think that we look for people that treat us how we believe we deserve to be treated. Like we find partners that meet us.
So you go with, cool, before you worry about jerk off Johnny, this is a big game of your own lack of self-love towards you.
It's your own lack of self-love, because here's the thing, and I don't know your friends, so I'll just say this. I'll make a general statement.
You'll appreciate this. This was mainly 17 to 25 years old, because you see that so commonly there. I mean, in later stages, people are in really deep relationships and you're in different parts of your life. When you're going through high school and college, you're spending so much time with people, you get better reads to the cleanness of the data is like, oh, this is really fucked up. When you're older, you're running in different circles, you don't really get to see it as easily.
Right. And I think that whether, no matter your age, this is what I believe. I think that when someone's treating us like crap and we stay with them, I think it's because we deep down inside don't believe we deserve better yet. And here's the thing, for people like that are dating your friend who's totally screwing them over, right? If you were to bring the best, most amazing, beautifully like kind person into their space, that same girl would probably put them in the friend zone.
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, because they don't yet deep down inside believe. Yeah,
and also people value different things through their life. One of the things, right now we live through a generation desperately interested in blaming social media for lack of accountability. They're just pointing fingers, right? Like if you are in a good place with yourself and your perspective is strong around gratitude, an anonymous person's negative comment is not going to ruin your day.
Yeah. And I think when it does, I think that's what's so tough, right? That's when it's a reminder to ourselves, like, oh yeah, we have some more work to do. One of the things I talk about in my book, Believe It, is just that ability to learn to turn down the volume on certain things and turn up the volume on other things. Like one example, we were 3 years into building the company, right? I was hearing no from everyone, Gary, like from all the retailers I dreamed of carrying our products that I used to shop in, right? I would save my tip money, like I mentioned, as a Denny's waitress, and buy products at the department stores.
What year was this?
So we launched 2007. Like I quit my job 2007. I wrote the business plan on my honeymoon flight to South Africa with my husband. Not the most romantic way to kick off a marriage. And we both got back, quit our jobs, dove all in. I thought, Gary, maybe so many entrepreneurs listening, I thought, oh, if I just pour everything I have and actually create a product that works, like it's just going to sell. If it's that good, it's just going to sell. And then I didn't realize it would be the hard. I mean, I've had a lot of jobs in my life, but being an entrepreneur is by far.
Well, you especially also built that brand different than building a brand today where you can use Shopify and social media to build it. You had to get a yes from Sephora, Ulta, Walmart, Walgreens, and Macy, whoever it was. And that is difficult when you're innovating the way you did. Do you know that my whole life is no? Do you know VaynerMedia? A lot of people listening don't know this. Most brands don't want to say yes to VaynerMedia. We don't want to do a commercial and then go to sleep. Like, we don't want to take 12 weeks to do the perfect commercial and then do print ads that look like it, or banner ads, or digital programmatic. My whole life building VaynerMedia is no. Everything I do is Gary Vee's easy. I just do it with the audience. But VaynerMedia is exactly, I know what you're living through, because when you innovate and you're doing something different and you don't look the part, you didn't work at Procter & Gamble for 13 years.
Yeah.
They're like, what's this Washington State thing? Like, you know what it is.
Well, and it's wild because I would go in and start, I would pitch the product, and, we were staying alive on social media. So we were getting, people were writing just blogs at that point, and we were selling like 1 to 3 orders a day on our website, and people were spreading the word. That was the only way we barely stayed alive. But all the retailers, exactly what you said. And by the way, I've learned this, like, when you're doing something that's authentic or that is different, but even if it's just authentic to you, even in a crowded industry, by definition, it's novel. By definition, it's never been done before. And I really believe, looking back now at this journey and everything, I believe that, like, even a lot of visionaries, touted visionaries, I think they can't imagine anything being successful unless subconsciously they have proof in the back that they've already seen it and it's already worked. So it's like, of course, so many people are going to say no to your dream or doubt your dream if they've never seen it done before. And we had 3 years of every single beauty retailer saying, no, you're not the right fit. It's not going to work. You're not right for our customers. And by the way, we talk about gut feeling. I kept having this gut feeling we're supposed to go on QVC, because then I could actually show my bright red rosacea and prove live that our product works, unlike the photoshopped ads on TV. And this is just something to share for someone who might need to hear this right now, who's having a gut feeling, but they feel like they're wrong. Like, I kept having this feeling, and every time I would do a meeting with QVC, it would be a no. Every phone call, I'd finally get, like, I got their head guy, Alan Burke, on the phone. He's like a legend. He's responsible for building this $1 billion beauty empire on QVC. And I finally got him on a call, and I thought for sure it was going to be a yes. And because if he's taking his precious time, and it was about a minute into the call, and he said, I just need to let you know, we've reviewed your product with all the buyers. It's unanimous. It's a no. You're not the right fit for QVC. And of course, I poured my heart out. I'm like, oh, but I am the right fit. And then we were down to under $1,000 in our bank account at that point. So I remember crying myself to sleep. And long story short, a year later, when I finally did get a yes to go on QVC, I took this big risk that I was advised not to by consultants. And I put real women of all shapes and sizes and skin tones and skin challenges. And I showed my own bare face and all the things that had never been done before. We sold out at the 10-minute mark. I was crying on national television because it's live. QVC is live to 100 million homes.
You knew the truth, and your heart would win, not, students telling you what to do.
Yeah, and listen, it was a big risk, but I feel like I know this lesson, that I know this, and now I've seen it play out with thousands of entrepreneurs over the years. But I know that authenticity alone doesn't guarantee success, but inauthenticity guarantees failure.
Love that.
Right?
Love that. Listen,
always.
I mean, you are preaching.
Ladies and gentlemen, rock this house and welcome to the stage, Jamie Kern Lima! Kern Lima!
Every single one of us has had someone tell us we're not enough. Every single one of us has had someone say words to us that hurt.